Well, good morning. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. Earlier in the week, I made a keto chocolate shortbread pie crust that came in at about 1.5 grams of carbs per slice. Well, today I'm going to show you a filling for that. This is a double chocolate mousse pie. It comes in at under 9 grams per slice, including the crust. I mean, just because you're living low carb doesn't mean you have to do without dessert. Before I show you that, just a reminder, if you like our videos, give us a thumbs up. And if you subscribe and click the little bell icon at the top right, you'll get a notice when I post new videos. Now let's get cooking. So I will list all the ingredients in the info section. This is a cup of heavy whipping cream. I would actually prefer heavy cream. Has a little bit more fat, but this was heavy whipping cream. And back here I have 2 8-ounce packages, 1 pound of very soft cream cheese. I have ½ cup of Splenda. You can use a different sweetener if you know how. And this is 2 tablespoons full of cocoa. I'm going to add about a teaspoonful of vanilla. And a bad thing here, I have about a little less than a quarter teaspoonful of cornstarch, which helps the whipped cream stay firm. So here's my 1 cup of heavy cream, and I'm going to take just a little bit of this and about 1 ounce of it and add it to the cream cheese before I start whipping. Now, let's talk about the cornstarch. I use just a tiny bit. You don't usually use any cornstarch at all in a keto recipe because it's so very high in carbs. But I use just a little bit, and when you're not putting sugar in your whipped cream, which I'm not, just a little bit of cornstarch helps it hold its shape and not separate. And it's less, what I put in was much less than 1 gram's worth, but I'm going to count it as 1 just for the carb count. And I'll get real specific on the carb count in the info section. So there's my heavy whipping cream. And let me get my little hand mixer here. And I'm going to beat this up. And I'll kind of show you the stage I'm going to beat it to. So I always start out kind of slow. And then I'll increase the speed as I go. And I'm going to do time lapse here because, you know, nobody wants to watch me whip cream. You want to whip it to the stage where you start seeing trails from your beaters in the whipped cream. And that's when we're going to add our flavoring and our cornstarch, just that little tiny bit. And let me tell you, full disclosure here, I made just a little bit of an error. I meant to put 2 tablespoons full of the Splenda in the whipped cream. That's about a teaspoonful of vanilla flavoring, which, by the way, I can't find a carb count on. It can't be very much because it's mostly alcohol. And it's vanilla extract, not flavoring. That's from my childhood. We just always called it flavoring. My grandmother used to buy vanilla extract from the Watkins guy that came around about once a week. It was always so good. I've actually never had any quite that good since. So I'm just beating this. The only thing you can do wrong here is you can beat it to the point where it starts to separate and make butter. And you really have to beat it a while for that. I'm just going around with my little hand mixer to make sure I got every bit of it beaten into the mix, every bit of it whipped. And I'm not particularly going for any peaks here, and I'll tell you why later. I just want to beat it till it's nice and firm, and that looks about right. See, it's holding on to my beaters there. You know, I love making whipped cream. My grandkids used to think when they were little that it was magic. So now I'm moving over to the cream cheese. I just got the whipped cream off the beaters and moved the mixer right over. And we're just going to beat this. The little bit of cream that I put in here makes it a little sweeter and a little bit easier to beat. I have seen a similar recipe done with mascarpone cheese. And mascarpone cheese is so wonderful. I just couldn't get it for this. So if you have access to mascarpone, use it. This is the 2 tablespoons full of unsweetened baker's cocoa. You can use more. I know this doesn't look very dark. Here comes my Splenda, half a cup. But it tastes very chocolatey. But you add as much as you want. It's 2 grams of carbs per tablespoon. And I didn't mention earlier, that's just a sprinkle of salt. About a 1/4 tablespoonful. So now we're going to do a little bit more mixing. Start slowly so you don't spread cocoa all over the kitchen. And if you let your cream cheese soften and you added that little bit of cream, this is going to mix really easily. And if you didn't have the time to let it soften, you can stick it in the microwave for a few seconds and soften it right up. So just mixing. I'm doing a little time lapse here. At this point, all you really want to do is to make sure it looks consistent, that your cocoa is all through it evenly. And you know, if you don't want to do chocolate, you can do this without the chocolate. Just add more vanilla. You can add some almond flavoring. However you want it. If you do it without the chocolate, it's sort of has the flavor of cheesecake. And why wouldn't it? Because it's mostly cream cheese. So you'll see this is a nice fluffy texture here. I'm going to scrape it down from the sides a little bit. And I'm going to grab a spoon and give it a taste, just to make sure it's sweet enough. And, you know, as I said, if you don't like to use Splenda, and please don't tell me all you think you know about Splenda. If you don't like to use Splenda, you can use any other kind of sweetener you want. That's good. I just don't know how to measure other sweeteners. I have tried this with monk fruit, and that works pretty well, but all I've got now is the golden, and I don't want to add that color. So I'm going to put about half of the whipped cream in, a little bit more than half. And as I say, I should have put 2 tablespoons of the Splenda in with the whipped cream, because I'm going to also use the rest of that for a topping. And this works fine. Your whipped cream is a little sweeter if you split that Splenda up. So look at that beautiful texture. That's why we call it a mousse. Very creamy, very light. We just blend this in now, kind of fold it in. I'm not using the mixer again. Just folding it in by hand. I'm going to taste it again, because you know I added all that whipped cream. I want to make sure it's still sweet enough. And it's fine. The half cup works just fine. So here's my crust. I baked this ahead, and I will put a link at the end of this video to how to make the crust. It's made with Carb Quick, very low carb. And it's a kind of a thick, almost the consistency of cake. Looks a little like gingerbread. So all I'm doing at this point is spooning this wonderful mousse, chocolate mousse in. And don't be fooled by the light color of the chocolate. It's really very chocolatey. But as I said, add more if you want. You just don't really need more. And I call this double chocolate because there's cocoa in the crust and the filling. So I'm going to try to get all of that in there. And it's very light and very creamy. I don't want to miss even a little bit of it. So I'm going to smooth it around, pull it all the way out to the edges. Now the carb count I've given you for this of under 9 grams of carbs per slice is based on slicing this in 7 pieces, which seems like a kind of an odd number, but it actually works out to a nice, generous slice, not skimpy at all. Of course, it'll be a whole lot lower carbs if you cut it into 8 pieces, And you'll get a nice big slice if you cut it into 6. But 7 usually works out pretty well for me for a 9-inch pie. And when we get it spread out, we're going to add the rest of our whipped cream. And I just washed this ladle off and I left it a little damp so it doesn't stick quite so badly. And you know, I was thinking when I was talking about cutting it into 7 slices, I wish that I had demonstrated how to do 7 even slices without a whole lot of measuring. I'll do that next time I make one. There's a little trick to it. Years ago, I worked in a restaurant and we cut all the pies in 7 slices. So I'm going to spread this whipped cream out, and you just want to make sure it comes all the way to the edge, touches the crust, and kind of seals it in, because we're going to chill this in the fridge when we're done, and we don't want it weeping. That's one of the reasons for the little tiny bit of cornstarch. Now, I'm not going to make this with swirls in the whipped cream because I'm going to cover it when I put it in the fridge, and the cover would just mess it up anyway. So I'm just going to put, I don't know, we'll just put some little swirls in the top of it. I'm just not going for peaks. And you can do this any way you want. Believe me, it doesn't last long enough for you to worry too much about a design on the top. Unless, you know, you're serving it at table. So there you go. I have a little shower cap cover that I'm going to put on this, and I'm going to stick it in the fridge for at least 30 minutes, but an hour or 2 is fine. I will just warn you, make sure your crust is fully chilled before you fill it, because it would melt. So it's nice and chilled, and I've had dinner, so I'm ready for my slice of pie. And this crust, now it's not your normal crust. You're going to cut it very carefully. And going back to talking about the 7 slices, the odd slice, what you do is you cut a Y, and then you cut a line straight down from this point, and then you make 3 slices on each side, and you've got 7. But be careful to cut it all the way through, and then I'm going to loosen it very carefully so that I don't tear it up before I serve it. And, you know, it probably wouldn't matter. You could serve this with a spoon, but I kind of want to get a nice slice out of it. So I'm loosening it with the knife, and then I'm going to get my pie server and loosen it more with that. So, and you should feel very special because I got out my silver pie server because I thought it would work best, and I had to polish it before I could use it. And I don't polish silver very often anymore, but I wanted to make this come out right. So I'm loosening it, just going a little at a time. You know, you have to adjust when you're using Carb Quick a little, but I've just about got it carefully loosened all the way to the tip. And let's see how this comes out. I'd like it to be a nice slice. Carefully. And look at that. I did it. Probably all because I got out the silver pie server. So let me plate this up. And you can see the texture of that crust there. And there you go. Double chocolate mousse pie. Now all that's left is to taste it. And you know, I often say, look at that. Eating low carb, you don't get hungry, but you get bored. And so you have to get a little creative. You know, that's so good. That is so rich and creamy. Sort of cheesecakey, but chocolate. And that little bit of crust, that is so good. I can't tell you how many no sugar pies I've eaten and left the crust on the plate. Let me show you this crust. cut into it, I want you to see that texture. It's soft. There's no flakiness to it. It's soft. It's like cake. See, it looks like gingerbread. I'm thinking I'm going to add some ginger next time. Thank you for joining us on Debbie's Back Porch. I hope you try this recipe. I hope you like it as much as I do. I hope it helps you stay on the eating plan that works for you. And I hope to see you again tomorrow.